by myself. Don't wanna stream all by myself anymore. I'm all by myself. I don't wanna stream all by myself anymore. I don't even know if this is live, which is why I'm singing, because I don't think people can hear me, but if they can, I'll feel uncomfortable. I think this might be Wisecrack's Case of the Mondays. I think I might be streaming live. I think I might be Michael. I think I might be a man born of woman. I think that, I might be existing in a late capitalist late capital situation that's slowly descending. Oh, they can't hear the singing? We can hear you. Someone said they can't, and now they said they can. How about this? If we get to 888 today, I will write and perform a Wisecrack theme song live. That's where I'm at. But good to see everyone. As you all know, producer Henry is off making movie magic. He is directing and starring in an adult film. We don't judge. But if you follow Henry on social media, please do ask him about his adult film career. It's really popping off. No, I guess pun intended. So, because Henry is off, and Lux has a lot to do, so we're gonna have Lux help me out on Wednesdays while Henry's gone. But Monday, like I said before, I'm all by myself. I'm gonna stream all by myself. What's up, Melojello? What's up, Beatmaster? What's up, Hanji? Coffee winner. Hanji, did the coffee show up? Hopefully it did. If not, let me yell at them. Hellraiser Fleshlight. Good to see you. Urinator. Good to see you. Snooch Boochums. Good to see you. Dr. Christopher Maverick. User 50. Red Green. Daniel Gibson. Everyone's here. Logan's here to regulate. Logan is here to fucking regulate on you guys. Okay, so it's the Case of the Mondays stream. You know what we're here to do. We're here to get started on a Monday together. Let me make sure I can be in the chat. Hi. Yep, I'm here. Please like the stream if you haven't already, as always. It helps us out as we try to stay alive, in this media ecosystem. Thank you so much for watching the Jubilee video on Friday, for those of you that did. It was sort of a grower and not a shower, I guess is not the right way to put it. But the video's doing pretty solid now, and that makes me happy. I was excited to make that one because I think Jubilee's a very interesting phenomenon. And I hope that no one who works for Jubilee was mad at that video. I did hear from one person who works there. I'm not going to lie to you. I heard from one Jubilee person about the video and how they thought it went and all that sort of stuff. Was Chris Maverick just typing in the lyrics to regulate? I like that. What's with the stream title? Someone said, shut up. You didn't have to make the analogy. You weren't forced to, Michael. What analogy did I make? Let's see. Oh, Hanji, I'm so glad. Okay, and I just want to note this because our stream partner is Yes Please Coffee. Hanji in the chat won our first coffee contest and said the coffee's good. Just going to remind you, let's do a little unboxing. This is what Yes Please Coffee looks like. It's incredibly good coffee. You get 20% off with code Wisecrack. They're our friends. We like them very much. Okay. And when I don't have Henry to bounce off of, it's not as good because Henry and I have a dialectical relationship. David, thanks for being here. Oh, the grower, not the shower. It's a horrible analogy. Okay. And if Henry was here, Henry would have said yikes or woof or something, and it would have slowed me down. But because Henry's making adult films, he can't be here to do that. So for anyone who asked, Harris Hole. For those of you who don't know what the Harris Hole is, let me do a little Wisecrack Live lore for you. Early on in Wisecrack streaming, we were trying to find our feed. Tennessee, Jed, and Might as well. We got ahead in the chat. But a thing we did early on was watch Johnny Harris videos. We used to say that we love to hate him, we hate to love him. And we called watching Harris videos, diving into the Harris hole for no other reason than it sounds fun to say. And we've kind of shied away. Oh, I am drinking Yes Please, by the way. So shouts to Yes Please. We've shied away from doing Harris too much because I think we started doing a little less like video reacting and more hanging out, talking, reading articles, things of that nature. But we're going to dive into the hole today. I shouldn't say what I'm about to say, by the way, because I'm trying to keep my personal and work life separate. But I did post a video over the weekend, yesterday, on my personal channel about how like coming up as a Christian turned me into a Marxist. So check that out if you're interested. I think some of you might dig it. It's a little more both academic and personal than stuff that we do here. Tanner Marshall here for the first time. Glad to see you. So let's see. Anything else I want to tell you about before we dive into this video today? Let's see. Announcements. We have a video coming out on Friday. God, I got to think about how we're going to market it, but we have a very cool new freelance writer and researcher working for us named Sarah. And Sarah is a PhD student in like psychiatry and psychoanalysis. So Sarah pitched us this video on the paranoid schizoid position, right? Which is a psychoanalytic framework, and how we can basically explain a lot of what's happening in American cultural and political life via understanding the paranoid schizoid position. It's one of those videos that I'm worried people aren't going to click because it's hard to put in a succinct way, but it's really good and uses some cool psychoanalytic stuff to help us understand both the structure of our own unconscious unfolding and the way that relates to society. So I do recommend checking that out. Hey, thank you for watching the Jubilee video. I see someone in the chat talking about it, and I really appreciate it. I'm going to do a lot of vocal fry today. So today is, I guess it would only make sense to do vocal fry on a Friday stream, like Vocal Friday. Okay, 444, someone says hat turn backwards. We can do that. If people want, we can do 444 hat turn backwards. God, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. We're 4 weeks away from our mega stream. So get excited about that. I've said this before. You know that our email is wisecracklive666@gmail.com. If anyone's in the Los Angeles area and wants to come hang out at the studio for the mega stream on Friday, December 13th, let me know. This is going to be a weird thing that I say now. But if you do want to do that, and I don't know you in any way, shape, or form, maybe send like a LinkedIn profile or like your social media handles or something. I know that sounds insane, guys, but like people out here getting murdered and stuff. I don't think anyone wants to murder me or anyone at Wisecrack. But like, it's a weird world we live in, and it's not personal that I would want to do just the most minimum background check. And then I just like know who you are. So when you show up, I can be like, hey, I know who you are. Drift King, Raw Dome is 1,000. There's no way we're getting there. There's no way we're getting there today on a solo stream on a Monday where the title of the stream has Harris Hole in it. And Lori Kristen, we are so Brad, it hurts. I watched SNL and no one get mad at me for this. I don't really get the Charlie XCX thing. I'm glad that makes people happy. I'm glad that for some of you, that is a musical artist that brings you joy. I think that's really cool, and I'm happy. Yes, Ernie is in the background, guys. I'm putting some Easter eggs in the background. So there you go. Wow, rally cap at 609. You guys are going a little pretty hard with this. Here, I'm going to change the title of the stream. That's pretty bad. Okay, now let me get set up for us to watch this video. Because, I'm not like good at stuff like how some people are. Okay, so now we're going to do our picture-in-picture situation. Okay. Oh, I don't want to see my face in the side of the thing. Let's see. Let's do that. Okay, we got the video there. Let's make old Mikey a little bit smaller. We don't need that much Mikey on the screen. I don't think so. I don't think anyone said they want that much Mikey on the stream. The blue bear is the Chicago Cub bear, or as me and my daughter call it, the Cubby bear. We have our things. Okay, so we're gonna watch. Rob, feel better, please. Change. Oh, am I gone? Uh-oh. Did changing the title ruin the stream? Hold on. Uh-oh. Did I die? Let me see. I want to see if I'm here. Okay, we're good. Mav is back. Mav is back. I'm back. Thank you for hanging out as I do this solo, guys. When I do solo streams myself, I feel way like less pressure. I think I'm still here. Okay. Yeah, when I do solo streams on my own, someone said not for me. God damn it. Okay. Yeah, when I do solo streams, oh my God. Oh God. There we go. Okay, now let's move that over there. Look at me. I'm just a master of computer. I'm so good at computer. I'm one of the top guys at computer. Let's see. Hey, what's up, everyone? Okay, so let's watch some Johnny Harris. The new video is on nationalism and how we invented it. People said this is good, and I will say that this video is heavily recommended by some of our friends in our Discord server. If you want to be on our Discord server, you know how. You know how to get there via le Patreon, which is French for Patreon. Okay, I'll check it out. I can't hear this video. Jesus Christ. Hold on.
It was built on an...
Oops. Just so many technical problems, guys. It's just like, why even get up in the morning if you don't know how to do things? Okay. We want to change our audio output. And of course, there's our input. We got to have that input, baby. Now let's try it.
An idea. It's an idea so
and let me know what the video volume
fight
is
and die
on the
for
stream.
We draw our maps around it. It shapes our politics and forms the basis of our very identity, who we think we are. It's an idea so pervasive that you've probably never even stopped to notice how weird it is. Because here's the thing. This idea is completely made up.
What?
And even though it might feel like it's been around forever, it's actually newer than you think.
This is going to sound like a stoner thing to say, but sometimes we have to remember that like almost every idea and concept is made up. You know what I mean? Like things that we take for granted as naturalized and universal concepts and ideas are in fact manufactured or produced things. I'm sure this video is going to be about that in terms of nationalism. But when people talk about borders sometimes, it is a little bit just like some guys at one point just said like this line on that side of the line is Estonia, and that side of the line is, what is Estonia border? Russia? I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just kind of silly. And that's true with a lot of things. And I do think if there's any big value in having an overall philosophical, critical mindset in your everyday life, it is to always operate with that assumption, right? That things, how do I phrase this? That many of the truths and or cultural, political, normative practices we have are contingent, right? They are not necessary. They are contingent practices, habits, behaviors, concepts developed by particular human beings in particular human times, and they are not necessary. So they can be otherwise. Now, they might be the best idea we have. They might be the best option of a current thing, but it doesn't mean that we should just take things as being essential or necessary concepts or ideas, when in actuality they're contingent. There's some good philosophy you can read there if you guys want to nerd out later.
That idea is called the nation.
Louder, please. Okay, I'll put the...
It says that a country is more than just the land drawn into a set of borders.
Let me know if it's loud enough.
It's actually a giant community that is united by heritage.
Okay, I got to respond to this question, then we'll dip in the video. Ethan says, and why does something being made up discount its validity? It doesn't, right? So the point isn't to say, wait, I keep getting ads. Oh, no. Guys, I feel like I might have clicked the wrong thing when I set up this stream and it put ads on it. I'm going to see if I can turn that off right now, but I would say there's a 50-50 chance that when I try to turn this off, it fucks the stream. But let's see. Monetization. Can I just like turn it off? Choose your ad. Oh, no. We don't want that. Oh, so now YouTube they do mid-roll ads. Oh, how can I turn this off? Um, wait. Sorry, guys. I don't want this. You know what? No, I can't do that. Fucking A, man. I think if I do this, it'll turn off ads. I am so sorry, gang. Don't interrupt their viewing experience. They don't deserve to watch these ads. I at least, I think, clicked a thing such that any ads that pop up should be skippable. So I am very sorry about that. I will be punished for that. You know, I'm going to go to hell when I die because of that. But I was responding to someone's question. The reason I stopped, let me see, where was it? I think it was Ethan's question. Wait, if it doesn't discount. So here's the point, right? We got to think in different terms. To say that something is contingent is not to say that it is valid or invalid. It's to say that it is contingent. So when we say that a concept is, you know, historically grounded and developed in a non-necessary way, the important question isn't just, well, is it valid or is it invalid? The question is it ontologically necessary? And by that I mean, is it necessary in some metaphysical absolute way? And it's important that even if something is valid in a certain context or at a certain time, that we acknowledge the contingency at the heart of that thing. I know that I'm getting a little esoteric here, but you know, we can talk more later. Someone asked about the God's not dead thing. Okay. So here's what we're going to say. And this is important. This is an announcement. 1, God's Not Dead 5. Full video coming out in about a month before Christmas. The last Wisecrack video you're going to get before Christmas is that What's Up, Jello Shots. Here's the real special announcement. We did not do a video on God's Not Dead 4. So what I am doing is a full watch along, meaning that I am going to watch the entire movie while recording myself watching it and live commenting, and the whole thing is going to go up on our Patreon. I'll make sure it's set for like the lowest level, so if like you're on the Patreon, you'll get it. If you don't want to sign up for our Patreon, which is totally fine, it's totally fine, we're going to make it where for like a few bucks, you can just buy it and watch the whole thing. Okay? And when you buy that, it's going to be literally like an hour and a half, the whole God's Not Dead 4 thing, and I'll be hanging out. I might try to drink 5 beers while I do that as well. So those things are coming. But when we do the full God's Not Dead watch along, none of you better snitch to Pure Flix that we basically have pirated the entire movie. Let's get back to the Johnny Harris thing. You guys are asking good questions. I love you. I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that we're here together. If we get to 888 Jello Shots, that's so sick. I'm glad that's how you found us. I can't imagine doing this without you, Jello Shots. I didn't know that that's the origin story of how we found each other. So there you go. And David, we're still doing the long stream on December 13th. Okay, let's get back to the Harris hole. And wait, what did this just say? Now would be a good time to insert ads. After I turn that off, YouTube's popping things up that are like, hey, baby, you want a little ads? Come on, just do it. Put them in there. It'll feel so good. And it's like, no, I don't want them to have to watch ads. We're just hanging out together. Why does everything have to be about money and ads? Why can't we just be together? That's what I'm saying. Okay. Back to the Harris video. We got 50 seconds in before.
And identity. It says that the people, the land, the state, they're all one thing. That thing is called a nation.
Ooh,
you're not just a person who happens to live in a place called America. You're American, or Brazilian, or Japanese, or Mexican, or Egyptian, Nigerian, Dutch, Micronesian. But let's stop a moment to learn the story of where this idea came from.
It's also funny that in America, it's just, people from other countries, do any of you do this thing that we do in America? I'm guilty of this, where we say, we almost don't say like I'm American. We're like, oh, I'm Irish and part Italian, or oh, I'm French in this, or I'm this and this. Like, we're very obsessed. And I guess it's because most of us, or many of us, are like 2 or 3 generations removed, or you know, our families have only been in this country for 100 years or less. But I do think that's an interesting thing where it's almost like the current, guys, I'm bouncing around a bit. I'm sorry. We'll get to the video. It's like the current wave of American nationalism is sort of one of the first times where people are just like, no, I am an American. You know, I almost feel like the corny American thing, which I am guilty of, right? So as an Irish American, I do the corny American thing where I'm like, oh, some of my grandparents and then all my great grandparents were from Ireland. So I'm like Irish American. I almost think that identifying as Irish in some way, and I'm sorry, my Irish brothers and sisters, I know this probably annoys the fuck out of you that we do this, and I totally get it. Speaking of Ireland, shout out to the Leftist Cooks. What a great YouTube channel. But in doing that, I think it's like actually kept me from over-identifying with America and has alleviated any temptation of American nationalism, and identifying as Irish to some extent and learning that history taught me about colonial oppression via what the English did to the homies. So yeah, there's some live theorization for you.
And how it took over everything. Because once you do, so much about our world suddenly makes sense.
Trying to do eugenics by nationality. It's like I'm...
Okay, cool.
Air Rodriguez, I'm from
Real?
Naperville too.
Great to see you.
Great to see you.
Oh,
It
that
feels
guy.
wrong to call it made up, I know. Like, it sort of contradicts everything you've ever been told about the world.
That's Max Fisher, my old colleague, who taught me a lot about journalism. Max was a New York Times columnist. He wrote this book,
I like
and
that
now
book
he
a lot.
hosts a couple of podcasts. And he recently planted this idea in my mind
But he
of
works
just
for
how
Pod Save
fake
America.
countries really are. So I wanted to bring him on to help me understand it and then explain it to you. It really does feel like countries are like natural, like they're a fundamental law of humans and human society.
Well,
And that's just the thing before. I know I was making this more esoteric point about contingency. I mean, that's it, right? When Harris says it feels like countries are natural, he's unconsciously or consciously making an ontological claim. Like there is an ontological necessity, an existential necessity for the existence of these places where the truth is they exist, but they exist contingently. But I'm sure our boy Max will let us know. His background looks really nice. He has a lot of plants. I think that guy lives in my neighborhood. That's a weird thing to say, but I think that guy lives in my neighborhood.
take France as an example. If I tell you France is made up, that feels wrong.
I mean, it does feel wrong because I look at a bunch of
Chaos
old maps
Machine, yeah.
and like even way back in time, there is a
Latest
shape
CIA
on the
drop.
map called France or the Kingdom of France, whatever, and it's changed, but like France was there for a really long time.
But okay, think about it. Is that true? France, like most countries, is built around a story. And that story says that there's always been a French people who share a culture, an ethnicity, and an eternal connection to the land. The borders and the government might have changed over the years, but this land has always been some version of France.
I was at a dinner last night for someone's birthday, and some of the people there didn't know that Macron is married to like his elementary school teacher that's 20-something years older than him. So I derailed an adult dinner party by making everyone learn about that.
Wrong. It's not true.
Okay, but show me why not.
Okay, we think that borders like France's formed because they contained people with the same ethnicity who spoke the same language, right? But when you overlay a map of the actual genetic makeup in Europe, it looks like this. Now look at France, and you'll see that any given part of the country has closer genetic links with foreigners across the border than they do with their own countrymen.
Yeah, but like you talk to Europeans who see their country as like the home of their unique ethnic group. And I think there's even studies on this that show that like Germany is for Germans and Italy is...
Ew. People are way too into ethnicity. Ethnicity is boring. Oh, do we do 666? Oh my gosh. Hey guys. Welcome to the land of 666. I'm glad to see you here. Hail Satan, which is French for the devil. Shouts to 36 Mafia. Shouts to, someone said this is so Radio Lab core. But yes, hello Satan. I really want to make a piece of merch for our December stream. And I kind of thought it'd be fun to do a Wisecrack Live Christmas shirt that's like Hail Santa 666, but I know the Hail Santa thing is kind of done to death. My other thought was like a hat or a shirt that was 666, but the sixes look kind of like Christmas ornaments. So it was like very whatever. But then my worry was maybe some of you wouldn't want something that actually had that on it. You know what I mean? Like, would you actually wear a hat or a shirt that said 666? I don't know. Let me know if we get to 888, because then we'll write and perform the Wisecrack theme song live.
for Italians. Like these borders were drawn around groups of people because of their common ethnicity.
When the Italians first made their border, they just laid out spaghetti in a big line.
So people from certain areas might share certain traits, like red hair, for example, but look at a map that shows the distribution of red hair, and you see stuff like this never lines up with national borders.
I like how they say red hair never lines up with national borders, but then you look in the top quarter, guys, and it's just like Scotland and Ireland are all that. It's very, I mean, that's just, I find that funny. That there is an example of a place where all the red hair is. It's literally just Scotland and Ireland.
Okay, so countries aren't correlated with ethnicity, but what about like language?
So today, sure, people within these borders predominantly speak one language, but this only happened really, really recently.
Mav, no one gets
Here's
the
a map
hip-hop
of
references.
languages in France as of the early 1800s. Only the people in this one area spoke something close to modern
Porkins,
day
you can
French.
catch up.
Most people in France spoke something else
Okay,
and had
Nathan,
for
that's fair.
hundreds of years.
Wow, that's surprising to me that there were a bunch of different languages within today's France. So people living in this land were culturally and genetically fractured. That's what these maps show. And they spoke a bunch of different languages, but they still belonged to one big political entity. Like there was a France here. Again, I've got this tool and I like scroll all the way back to like the 1200s and I see a thing called the Kingdom of France.
Anyone with $10,000 or
no.
more in credit card debt or personal
watch
loans
this
may
ad.
qualify for help from National Debt
National
Relief.
Debt
Minimum
Relief
payment-
sounds cool. Let's all sign up.
Ruled by a king.
I'm sure National Debt Relief isn't an exploitative company that takes advantage of struggling people by taking their debt and repackaging it while putting them on a higher loan thing that they can't get out of and they don't have any like possibility of relief from.
King who was apparently ruling people who lived on all of this land.
That guy looks
So
way
wouldn't these people be
beta to be a
considered French? Like, isn't this proof that countries have existed for hundreds, if not thousands of years?
So Harris does a thing, and I can't decide if I find this annoying or if it's fair, where he's definitely performing the role of someone who doesn't know. He knows the answer to the question he's asking, but he performs that role so that his guest can then be the smart guy. Maybe that's a cool thing.
Actually, no, not in the way that we mean countries today. For someone living down here, hundreds of kilometers from the King's Palace in Paris, there was no concept of being French. They probably identify with the people in their village or their town, but that is about it. I'm like, what do you care if another town hundreds of miles away happens to be ruled by the same king, who, by the way, is just some guy who levies taxes on you occasionally?
Okay, so French people at this time were
Did they really think of the king as just some guy at that point? Couldn't he come like cut your head off or steal your wife?
more like subjects who happened to be ruled by the same person living in a faraway capital, as opposed to today where countries are more like one giant club where we all feel unified and we're willing to die for a national story.
Show of hands if you're willing to die for a national story.
Right, and borders used to fluctuate all the time. If you lived up here and your town switched from the French king to the English king, did your identity suddenly
that
flip
last
from
comment's
French
weird.
to English too? No, you're still just a farmer
Party
from a
tourist, good
village
point.
trying to scrape by.
Okay, so that's France. There was divided languages and ethnicities, arbitrary borders, and not really a sense of like unified France. But what about elsewhere? Is this happening everywhere?
That's everywhere.
Okay, but what about like China? China was a place where you had
It
a
was a place.
powerful imperial government. They were proud of their identity. They saw themselves as the world's central civilization. Like when I look at Chinese history, there seems to be this cultural identity that lasted and lasted.
When I look at Chinese history, there's a few really cool pictures. So weren't those millions of people necessarily unified in one cultural narrative? I'm being unfair, and I know that.
And still seems to last into today.
So that version of ancient Chinese identity that you're referring to, that was felt strongly among the political elite in the capital, but basically nowhere else. Most people under their rule
Whoa,
did not
that's
speak
lots of places.
Chinese and did not think of themselves as Chinese. The borders were always shifting and even sometimes split between rival empires, which meant there was no fixed sense of what constituted the Chinese people or Chinese land.
So actually very similar to the French story. So let's get back to that. If I look at my little time lapse of maps, eventually the shape of France does turn into
I wonder if they're talking about France and China because they're two of the countries that have created the best cuisines in human history.
To France, the France that we know today. How does that happen?
We're not picking on poor
step
Johnny.
in that
He's
direction,
also not
and this applies
poor
for China
Johnny.
too, is by becoming an empire.
Definitely
Okay. Empires. Yes, I know empires. That's something that I've actually looked quite a bit
Shouts to
into,
France fan.
and I want to kind of approach the imperial history of France and Europe and the
Matt, you're
world,
cracking me up
but
today.
through this lens of it was very fractured, and sort of see where it goes from there. Before we go on, I'm flying to Saudi Arabia tonight, literally in a few hours. And one of the big issues that I face...
A few hours? I think you got to get to the airport, bud. I'm pretty sure, doesn't he live in D.C.? A lot of traffic, big airport. If you're flying international, come on.
When I travel is staying connected on my phone. It's pretty expensive to just
are you gonna VPN
let my
us?
phone connect to the local network, and my carrier back here in the United States charges. Okay, so Max has sufficient...
No free ads, Johnny. Although the whole video is a free ad because the shirt he's wearing, he's going to try to sell us. I think the Christmas time 666 shirt is cooler than that shirt.
Convinced me.
Now, does that shirt exist? Yes. Does the Christmas time 666 shirt exist? No. Would it be better if it was ornaments, guys? If it was 3 ornaments and they were circular, but they had 6s on them, and maybe there were different 6s, would that make you feel better about wearing that in public? Let me know.
That countries aren't real, that they're made up in our minds, and that France was not a real country until recently. So
Good
I've
point,
been looking
Julia.
into what happens next. Trying to answer this question
Oh, yeah,
of
he is
when
CIA,
does
so he's fine.
France start to look like the France of today? The first thing I thought of here was the French Revolution, the late 1700s. What looks more like national...
Shout out to the French Revolution. Once I was teaching a class at George Washington University, and I was talking about the French Revolution as the exemplification of the ideas of freedom and liberty in Jean-Jacques Rousseau. And I said something positive about the French Revolution, and this one student who later transferred to Princeton because he said he was smarter than everyone else was like, so to be clear, in defending the French Revolution, you are apologizing for terrorism, and you yourself are a terrorist. And I was like, dog, don't try to do this. Don't try to do this. What are we doing? What are we doing?
Spirit than a bunch of people rising up together to overthrow their king.
Let them eat cake.
But it turns out that we're not even close. People at this time still basically didn't speak French. They didn't share some French identity. In fact, the French Revolution can kind of be seen as the start of the long road of building a French identity. The process of a bunch of fractured communities unifying under one story. This revolution embodied a fairly new idea that the government actually derives its legitimacy not from God or some other natural right, but from the people themselves. That all of these people were not royal subjects, but rather citizens. That this country...
Man, I'm going to be bummed if a people's revolution is the origin of nationalism.
Country was theirs, which turned all of this land, at least in
Hey!
their minds, into
Is it
a new kind of
777?
thing.
Sorry, we got to do a prayer now at 777. Dear God, I assume you're they, them, because it feels like it would be wild for you to be bifurcated into a traditional gender pronoun. Maybe you have a whole other pronoun that we don't know. But dear God, wherever you are, whoever you are, might I pray that all of us in our weeks can be cured of the case of the Mondays. Might I ask that we all, have some time to take naps and feel refreshed this week. Might I ask that we're able this week to, for all of us, either eat one meal or have one beverage session where we eat or drink too much, but we don't feel that bad the next day. Might I ask that of you, God, whoever it is out there in the cosmos. Thank you for granting us the ability to all hang out together on the internet and in little chat boxes, talk to people that seem funny and nice and cooler and kind of like us, which makes us feel a little less alone in the world. Because to be honest, God, it feels a little lonely sometimes in this world because a lot of people think really crazy stuff. And then sometimes you just feel like you just maybe don't have friends in your own life that think things the way that you do or agree with things you think, and they can be lonely and alienating. So sometimes, even if it's in a digital space, finding those people can be really useful. We ask this in the name of all that you are. Amen. Let's get back to Harris.
The soil that they came from and owned together. But listen, this is all still really abstract in people's minds. It's like a very new idea, and it would remain so until this guy came around.
The CIA has particular skills in developing relationships.
Guys,
Life is all about...
there was just a first of all, There is a CIA commercial on a Johnny Harris video. Second of all, I think it was for Masterclass. Masterclass is a CIA masterclass where you can learn how to be a CIA. Not good.
Napoleon Bonaparte advanced the process of turning France into France perhaps more than any other French person. Remember how France looked like this? Well, Napoleon started to make it look a lot more like this. He rallied the people around this new idea of patriotism, complete with symbols and songs and art that emphasized French greatness, the idea that we all belong to one giant tribe. This idea was further cemented when Napoleon recruited men from all around this country to come join his army, to fight for France, giving them the sense that they were all joined in a glorious national fight.
Like, what were they fighting over back then? I don't really know history that well. Like what did they have to fight over?
And in the process, spreading that nationalistic idea all throughout Europe. Napoleon did something else that was very important, and you can see it in this painting. Instead of pledging loyalty to the Pope, as European kings had always done, here he is crowning himself. The Catholic Church at this time had been declining in power, and Napoleon was sidelining.
Crowning oneself, what is that? What's the word for like a masturbatory coronation, like a reach around coronation? Or maybe if you crown yourself, you sit on your hands for 2 minutes first so you don't feel them, and then you do it. So it's like a stranger coronation.
It in favor of himself, his imperial cult of personality.
Expansionism.
This was a pretty smooth power
that's
play,
what I figured.
but it also helped shift people's sense of loyalty
Hey,
away
happy
from
birthday,
religion
PSHSX1.
and towards their nation. By the end of his reign, Napoleon's France was pretty unrecognizable from those scattered, loosely connected kingdoms that had dominated this land for many, many years. It was looking a lot more like one thing, like a country. Okay, but there was still a lot more to do before.
So did George Washington invent America?
France became as unified as we think of it today. Their revolution eventually faltered. These Napoleonic wars didn't really work out. But then something bigger happened.
9/11.
Industrialization. What Napoleon and others previously had done had helped unify France kind of mentally, psychologically. But what industrialization does is it unites it physically with iron and concrete. Here come all these factories, and factories need trains to bring in raw materials and to send out finished products.
That's true.
So you see all these new train networks that put France's towns within just a few hours of each other, interlinking communities that had always been separated by distance. In turn, this brought more people in.
Trains rip. Shout out to you if you live in a country that has a lot of trains. We don't have a lot of trains in the country that I live in, you know. So I wish you had that. Steven said it alienates the workers from their labor. I was waiting for someone to make like a, early Marx comment.
To the cities, melting pots of people.
Has Johnny Harris ever read the work of Karl Marx? Yes or no?
From all over the country, now swirling around together. All of their little regional identities were mixing into a new French identity, something they all shared.
Whoa. Miss, pull your shirt up. We're trying to be a nation right here. Come on, this isn't the Moulin Rouge.
Factory work more and more required people to read, so the government built a national school system. They taught the French language, along with French national pride and values. Soon, all the Bretons and the Occitans.
I mean, I feel like it's always funny to imagine what like a based Harris would look like, and I guess the based Harris here would be talking about how, and maybe he'll get here. We're not done with this video. About how like the real root of nationalism is just creating a unified working class to serve the means of industry to make money for the industrialist or something.
Become Frenchmen. The school teachers were kind of like heroes. They were nicknamed the foot soldiers on the front lines of this effort to indoctrinate the next generation in this new national identity. Rising literacy meant mass media, newspapers. Now
Johnny
people could
should be
read about the
POTUS.
events of the day, making them feel a part of a community.
I'd rather Johnny Harris be the president than a Paul brother or a Beastmister.
They could keep up to date on the nation's politics, making the capital feel within reach to everyone. Now, remember how Napoleon had built all of those outposts throughout the country?
I do.
Well, now, thanks to all of these advances in travel and communication, the central government could actually rule over these places, over every corner of the country, through a uniform, universal government system rather than through local lords and magistrates. And, like in the schools, they mandated that all of this was done in the French language and conveying the French national story, pride in the nation. So yeah, when Max says that the nation is a new thing, he's really right. It wasn't until like 1870 or 1880 that you start to see a modern French identity that kind of looks like the one we know today.
I mean, I completely understand the necessity of picking one country as the primary example in this video to make it easy to understand. Maybe they'll talk about this, but I do wonder, like, if all of this is happening on the same time as well, like in a parallel sense, because they're seeming to get a lot of juice off the idea that France is sort of analogical for all of it.
And some historians, like the guy who wrote this book, argue that it didn't really fully happen until the 1910s, like 100 years ago. Some beautiful maps.
We might get a POTUS collar beast.
So, countries are a new thing. But here's the deal. Our leaders don't want us to know that. In France, the ruling elite at the time didn't want to admit that France was kind of a new thing. That would sound way too weak and delicate. So they kind of constructed a national mythology that implied that France has kind of been around forever. They wanted people to...
I want to see more French cartoons. I want to watch more French nationalist cartoons. Okay. So now we're, there's just always this missing layer to Harris. But yeah, some nations are developed, and then we retroactively develop mythology to justify the thing that we need now.
Believe that the idea of France was eternal.
But that's sort of so let's get back to the contingency and necessity thing. By the way, if you're just tuning in and have tuned in recently, this is Wisecrack's Case of the Mondays. Hashtag all by myself edition. Producer Henry is off making a nature documentary. So I'm solo on Mondays. Lux will be joining me on Wednesdays. We might have a very cool guest this Wednesday, but I don't want to announce it yet because it's not confirmed. We're hanging out. I'm drinking that Yes Please coffee that comes in pretty little bags like this. If you want that Yes Please, 20% off with code Wisecrack. It's our official coffee partner. I say partner, not sponsor, because they don't pay us to say that. We get a small kickback if you use our code and get the coffee. We're hanging out. If you watched our Jubilee video on Friday, friggin' thank you. I really appreciate it. If you're here, we're having fun. If we get to 888, we'll write the Wisecrack theme song together. You'll get co-writing credit when we win a Grammy. We're watching the recent Johnny Harris video, which is on the development of nationalism. Earlier in the stream, I talked about contingency and necessity as it relates to the development of concepts and ideas. And in a sense, like mythology often gets used to cover up the space where contingency is, to cover up the contingency hole, so to speak. Because there's often like a hole at the core of our ideas, like a void, a gap, a space in which there's a lack of consistency. I'm getting a little bit into it here, in which the consistency of an idea revolves around. But we don't like that hole or that gap because it seems to not be a full-on, complete, totalizing explanatory mechanism. So what does mythology do? Well, mythology allows us to cover up that hole, to fill the hole, to bury things inside of the hole so we don't see the hole, right? Mythology allows us to say, oh, there is consistency. There is necessity, right? Think about America. Estados Unidos, États Unis, other people call it other things, and manifest destiny. Well, what was the manifest destiny? A mythology that justified, and to an extent, the massacre of people and the stealing of their land, but it frames it as a necessary thing. And now when it's a necessary act of manifest destiny, we can say that it's moral and good and not just a contingent act, by some other people. Stories are important, I almost said important, are important. Wasn't there a movie called Holes, based on a book called Holes, that Shia LaBeouf was in? So there we go. At 888, we can definitely, we'll get whole for sure.
It was fixed, and therefore,
Henry
so
leaves
were
for
these
2 weeks,
borders,
and the channel
this
gets
shape.
canceled.
That was
for
a much
Whole.
more compelling story that created
That'd
a
be
sense
fun
of
if I just
loyalty
kamikaze the whole
and
channel.
patriotism
Just did something insane.
among the French people.
Uh-oh.
And it totally worked. This idea spread not just in France, but throughout this whole continent.
In Italy, it began when an ambitious...
And it's important to note that the period of time he's showing right here, I think we're going to get into, the emergence of nationalism and fascism pre-World War II. Important to note that in, the late 19th and early 20th century, a big part of the workers' movement was IWW, International Workers of the World. What unified people was their position as laborers and workers, not their position as members of a particular society. So that's why, classical workers' movements, leftist movements, communist movements broke with the narratives, the mythologies, the contingencies of nationalism, and instead looked at materiality, right? Because materially, what most people are not French or Chinese or Uruguayan or Greenlandian. They are workers. They're unified in their material participation in the working class. So, in a sense, what a lot of these nationalist movements were doing, I mean, they were counter-revolutionary. They were conservative. They were right-wing precisely because they were interrupting the narrative of a unified working class. Because, of course, what would happen if you unified the working class? You'd have an ass ton of people on the same team and a very small amount of guys on the other team. You didn't hear it from me. I forget, because sometimes when I'm streaming alone and Henry's not here, I think that I can just be me and say whatever I want. And then it gets a little more, spicy. Sorry.
Rouser set his followers marching on Rome.
And eventually, our entire
Greenlandian.
World would be built off of this idea.
Montez, that's a sick paycheck.
Why is everyone spiraling over YouTube banning ad blockers? Like, chill, guys. Just use Pi.
Chill.
It's a free Chrome
Just use
extension
Pi.
that's actually...
YouTube ads are insane.
This was happening all over Europe.
So France's
Hey, like the
nation
stream if you
building
haven't.
really seems like it was top down.
Wisecracklets.
Was it like that
What up,
everywhere?
Allie?
It's a lot of both top-down and bottom-up. So Napoleon had spread these ideas as
Mad's
he conquered
dissertation.
across Europe. And as that way of thinking sunk in, more and more people wanted a nation. People all over Europe staged this wave of revolution.
Like, Max Fisher's book is really good, but he's also just another one of these Pod Save America libs that kind of ignores the underlying materiality of so many of these arguments.
That mostly failed, but got people animated to fight for what they saw as unrealized national homelands. And some fought wars of independence or unification that did eventually create nations.
Okay, like Italy eventually did that, right? It was super fractured, seemingly, and then it all comes together.
Yes, though even when Italy finally unified in 1861.
Wait, 1861? That's so recent.
Oh, it gets even wilder. Only 2.5%
It gets even wilder felt so incredibly scripted.
of people in the new Italy even spoke Italian, and almost none of them even thought of themselves.
Here's the question. With the shot of Max, is it Max Fisher? On the computer there, is he actually on a call with Johnny right there? Or are they recording him after the fact saying those lines?
Italian. One of the unification leaders has this famous quote that I love. He said, "We have made Italy, and now we have to make Italians."
We have to make it the Italians.
Wow, so how do you do that? How do you make Italians?
First, you crush the tomatoes.
It's mostly the same
Sorry,
as in
I'm
France.
so
Schools,
sorry.
national administration, industrialization, and a lot of national myth making.
So what I saw was that France doesn't finish that process until like 100 years ago, like 1910. Was it the same for
Wait,
Italy?
is it theme song time?
Italy started even later, and it was not as industrialized as France had been, so it went much slower. Even by 1950,
I love
only
Italians.
20% spoke Italian, and people mostly identified with their regional language or with their city and not with it.
Yeah, someone brought this up in the chat. Is religion kind of being ignored right here? Like, what is the role of religion in all this? We haven't really talked about it yet. I think that is a pretty huge. I think that's pretty huge. But who knows? Can someone confirm 888? Actually, here, let me see if I can check. I'm going to switch my windows. Let's see. I see 874. Was 888 hit at some point? We could do it. Okay, we'll theme song it. Give me 1 second. We're going to theme song it. I'm going to be right back, okay? Okay, let's write a theme song, guys. What do we think needs to be in the theme song? What should this theme song really emphasize? Do you want a major key? Do you want a minor key? Let's really think about it. Should the Wisecrack theme song be sort of like straight ahead? Or should it be kind of like funky? Should we be like... Oh, someone said B sharp. Okay. Oh, no, but then someone else said D minor. Logan wins because it has to be D minor. Okay, we'll do with that. Okay, then someone said C sharp mixolydian, which would be right. Okay, so what would be a good Wisecrack theme song? Wisecrack, Wisecrack, we're going into the Harris hole. We're Wisecrack, Wisecrack. When we hit 666, Satan has our soul. And then we'll switch to what would be another quartering over. It's a YouTube channel run by a bunch of freaks making decent videos and streaming twice a week. Wisecrack, Wisecrack, 1,000 concurrents and you will see the dome. I was gonna stop, but then Dead Card said something. Making content's pretty hard when you're trying to talk about Kierkegaard, but if you work hard, you can make it happen. Okay, there we go. We have a Wisecrack theme song now. Do not smoke actual crack. I'm sorry. I think there was some keys brought up that I was not able to work in. So, you know, there you go. Will that guitar fall down if I put it there later? You know, next time we're going to have Logan come in on the banjo and we're going to turn it into something a little bit funkier because that's how he gets down. Let's watch this video.
That only really changed with the first national TV channels in the 1960s. There was even this famous
TV did nationalism.
TV show, It's Never Too Late, that taught people Italian.
Non è mai troppo tardi. Non è mai troppo tardi.
All of which is to say,
Italians are so sick.
That this process of internal nation building, of becoming a country.
So I'd say thus far, the two things I'm noticing lacking in this video are discussions of religion and mapitalism.
Can take like a century, and it's all really recent.
What's crazy about this is once you start to really get your head around the national myth, you kind of see it everywhere. And you start to see how much it has influenced our modern history, identities that have led to war and conflict all over the world. So let's go back to Europe really quick and look at a few more, like Germany. Germany unified in like the...
How did Germany unify? What did they do in recent history to help them unify, Johnny?
1860s and 70s. Its process was a lot like Italy's, and it actually inspired other countries to rise up with this ethnic nationalism.
Yeah, if you brought up
old
race.
empires into new countries: Serbia, Romania, Norway, Bulgaria, Albania. A lot of them followed a similar template. But the invention of all of these new countries was kind of like a powder keg.
Yeah, like race, religion, economics. We're not talking about some stuff
that eventually exploded into
colonization. I don't know.
First World War. The winners got together and redrew the entire map around the national idea. One nation for one people. The idea is that this would kind of create peace, because if one people were just in these boundaries, then there'd be no need to fight wars. Right? Wrong. Because borders were never going to be perfectly drawn around a people. Like, this is Germany's border, but this is where all the German speakers are. You can see they don't line up. So instead, all of this redrawing of borders led to ultra-nationalists rising up across Europe on promises to conquer the land that they considered rightfully theirs, which led to yet another world war. And this gets to the dark side of the idea of a nation. It very naturally breeds the persecution of minorities. Because if a nation is supposedly defined by its shared ethnic identity, then anyone who is not in that majority identity...
I just got distracted because now I'm realizing I could have done some better stuff with the theme song. You don't really normally start a progression on the 6 chord, but it's doable. I know some of you know music theory a lot better than me. I'll work on it.
Is an outsider. They're a threat to the character of the nation. Now, of course, the national identity, the national character, the ethnic identity, all of this was made up. But boy, did people start to believe that it was real. Fascists would go on to murder millions in the name of nationalism.
I know everyone tells you to time block to be more productive, but it doesn't really work. Let me explain why. Time block.
Remember that time we were watching B-roll footage of the Holocaust, and then we got an ad for time organization stuff? Sometimes it's just too real, you know? We're really in it. We're talking about fascism and nationalism, and then there's some ad that's like, do you want to learn to be more effective? No, I want to learn to, like, you know, fight the ideologies that give us things like the Holocaust. But do you have an app for that? Is there an app for that one? Oh, there's not? Okay, we'll just get back to the video.
An idea that was basically invented 70 years earlier. So we've been talking about Europe, but things like railways and mass media spread around the world. And so did the idea of
I wonder what motivated those railways. I wonder what underlying, no pun intended, engine motivated those things.
Nation. Just like in Europe, communities tied by language or history started to think of themselves as nationalities, ready to fight for nations of their own. Oftentimes, this happened in places where people were forced together by arbitrary imperial borders. Often
arbitrary imperial borders. We're 20 minutes and 30 seconds in, and we're learning that maybe sometimes a nation happened because one people came over in a boat and said, you are this and this is that. 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the video.
Drawn by Europeans. But even that was a unifying idea that led people to rise up, to kick their colonizers out,
good call,
and
Ron.
to fight for their own national idea. And soon the entire world would be defined by this idea of the nation. Firm borders, centralized governments, flags, and pride in your country.
Wow.
But while this looks neat on a map, it's not perfect, because the idea of a nation is inherently imperfect. We have this idea that every
inherently imperfect, but like, I don't know, man.
Person is entitled to a nation of their own, but the way those people identify ebbs and flows and changes and often doesn't fit perfectly into one box. We start wars over territory that our national myth says belongs to us. We fight over who belongs in our national community and who doesn't, and who gets to decide. So much of the conflict and violence in our world today.
It's almost like, are you trying to talk about some specific stuff, Johnny, or are you avoiding the specific stuff?
Comes from our belief in the nation. And my question in all of this is there a better way, a more peaceful way to organize ourselves? And yet
yes, by height.
It feels like we're stuck in this way. These identities that seem so firm, and they seem like they're getting like firmer and more intense every year. Like this is the only way that we can organize our world.
I think the Wisecrack video we did on borders, written with our buddy John Duncan, subscribe to his channel, is better than this.
By countries and nationalities.
The good news is that it's not necessarily
Look at this cat.
As fixed as you might think. National identities can change. Like, let's go back to France, where it's becoming more accepted that you can be French regardless of your race or religion or your place of birth. But at the same time, there's also a rising backlash to that clings to the idea of France as just for the French. You know, like it or not, people need some sort of collective.
But like, okay, so with France, tons of the contemporary issues in France they're talking about can be traced back to things like the colonization of Algeria and other places in Africa, right? Colonization leads to those sorts of things, which then sort of skirts over into like a weird, messed up racism and Islamophobia that's connected to the effects of colonization. Like, so much of our society, like these are the types of guys who are considered like smart guys, you know, and the guy on the Max guy works for the Pod Save America guys, which are considered like the smartest guys of how to do Democrat. They're so good at doing Democrat, but they just leave these things out. And I don't think, okay, I'm not accusing them of what I'm about to say, but there's a way in which you could read it that they like maybe unconsciously leave out the elements of this narrative in which, like, I don't know, their identity type are the baddies, or that like they potentially benefit off the structures and systems of power that led to some of the stuff. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. But again, I'm sure they're great guys. I'm sure they're great guys. Good guys. I would die for them.
Identity to hold on to, and national identity is just the one we have right now.
Ali, I accidentally did Trump voice,
and
I was hoping no one noticed.
We still have these identities that are fixed around land and
not
borders,
serious
but
people.
that they can expand and become
iffy
bigger
jiffies,
and take on
just call
different
a spade
meaning.
a
Like
spade.
the idea of European, that feels like an identity that is very real. It's still collective and it's still defined, but it doesn't have the danger of exclude.
Like Courtney Lee said, they don't think they're leaving it out. And I think that's right. Like Courtney Lee, that's the thing. Like I truly think that they are not consciously leaving this stuff out, because I truly think that they really believe that this is the picture. Okay, we'll get through this video stuff. I know we're going a little over. Thanks for hanging out.
Competition and war, at least not within those big borders. How would you describe a cosmopolitan identity?
Think of people who live in a big global city like New York or Hong Kong or London or Singapore, and this identity that you are a person of the world, that you're a globe traveler, that you're taking in many different cultures. That's kind of cosmopolitan identity.
Like a very class-based identity too that we're not getting into.
It's ironic, we don't think of that as an identity, but it absolutely is, and it's one that's taken the place of national identity.
It's like someone who on their like dating profile, they're like, I'm really into travel. Really? You like not working and going on trips? How unique of you. I'm sorry. I'm sure we all say we like travel, but it's a little bit like, yeah, of course I like to travel, because it implies that I'm just hanging out, and hanging out rips.
Identity.
What else do you think exists out there that could replace this? And
goblins.
Does the nation ever go away, or does it just get watered down and become less salient over time?
There are lots of places that you can get your sense of identity and your sense of community
Eddie, same.
from. I mean, I think there are people who
Green Day
find that
meetup, when?
in religion. You can find that in your profession. You can find that in your local community, which is the way that a lot of people used to do it. And I think the fact that we are all becoming more aware and more conscious of the fact that we need to get community from someplace is making us a little more thoughtful about it, and at times more constructive about it. Although you still see
God, this is just the most liberal coded BS.
This push-pull, which is probably going to go on forever, of do we want a hardened national identity?
There's a whole set of things that I'm not saying right now that I want to say so bad.
That's about us versus them and who's in and who's out, or do we want to create some sort of a way of thinking about our role in our community?
It's just like, the way we get together is thinking about ourselves as members of a community that are cosmopolitan and all participate in it together. It's like, there's a lot better ways modeled for thinking about the unification of human beings outside of nationalistic boundaries. A lot of people have thought about this for quite a long time. And we got some good options here. I mean, even like, I don't think this is the solution, but the fact that they're not even like considering the role of like religion in some of this is insane to me.
And our identity that is more inclusive.
I also wonder often,
or, you know, thinking about the way in which the working class provides a unifying identity. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm too drunk.
If humans need a them, an enemy, like
it's coffee.
Or at least in a nationalistic context, there seems to have to be a them in order for there to be an us. But
God, it's just like, and there's the thing too, I don't think that everyone that talks about everything should have to do deep research into all this stuff. But if you're Jonathan Leonard Harris and Max Eleanor Fisher, like, you have money, time, and resources. Like, there's just so many people that have spent so much time thinking about this. Like, I always think about, if you're interested in this question, this is for you all. I just think Freud's civilization and its discontent is so good on a lot of these questions.
I do wonder within our psychology if these identities that don't have
James.
are less potent or have less staying power than the kind of embattled
Goblins
sense of like, I'm an American and terrorists are out to get me, you know, like having an enemy is such a potent way to coalesce people.
But for what? They're not talking about why they want to coalesce people. Like, it's people don't use this stuff because they just like want to have a nation. There's clear just like economic and racial reasons for this stuff that they're just not talking about. It's going to drive me crazy.
Around fear.
I think that's totally true. I think there's so much.
Why?
much evidence that psychologically just our brains are so much more drawn to identities that are defined around fighting and resisting and fearing some outgroup, some them.
Say more.
But I think that just goes to show that it is something that we have to be conscious about and really thoughtful about in order.
Mindfulness is the way out of this, guys.
To rise above.
So this has been
if we all download the app Headspace, we'll be good.
Pretty fascinating history for me. And after charting through it, I'm left with this feeling.
Please try to sell us a shirt,
countries
Johnny.
and nations are ideas that we,
I'm left with this feeling like you just realized all this.
as a world, are still learning to live with peacefully. But ultimately, countries are just that. They're an idea. They're flexible. They're malleable.
And then like this music cue here, and it's brilliant. Like these videos are so well edited, but this music is like meant to make us feel like something smart is being said.
As malleable as our minds, we can change how we draw these lines and who gets left in and who gets left out. It's something that I believe we are slowly figuring out with a lot of bumps in the road. And
Just a
even
few
though
bumps,
it feels
a few bumps
hardwired and
in the
fixed,
road.
like this is the way it has to be, it only feels that way until someone comes around with a better, more enlightened way to organize.
Yeah, is he in Saudi Arabia now?
On this planet.
Okay.
Wait, before you go, you can buy this shirt if you're into this.
Don't. I don't actually, I just don't think that's that good of a shirt. I think you could do way better things with that shirt than that thing right there. Video by Johnny Harris and Max Fisher, story producer Max Fisher. Okay, we did it, guys. We did it. They said we couldn't. And I'm going to be honest, I didn't want to tell you this, but a lot of people said we couldn't do this today. There's people outside my house. There's people calling me and they were just like, you can't do it. They were like, with Henry gone, you ain't shit and you can't do anything. They said that to me. They wrote me letters. It was really bad. To be clear, it's always better when Henry's here, but we showed them that we could do it. Okay? I mean, so Countess J says it's a waste of time. It's not a waste of time though, in so much as it shows us how people sort of ask the right questions, but almost trick themselves out of arriving at the real answers or causes and like obfuscate things more than they should, because there's stuff that we could have talked about. There's things they could have gotten into that I think could give us a much better, thank you, Tetra and Taylor, a much better explanation of this sort of stuff, and they just didn't. When I think about nationalism, it's like a lot of what they said, almost all of what they said is true, but it's not the whole thing. Because again, like we have to think about the way in which like racial identity gets, think about like the way racism plays into this in at least two ways, way more than that. But like we have colonization on one side in which identity gets used to say this nation is one thing and it is good. And that nation is full of that identity. So they're bad. So we can exploit them, their humanity and their labor. And then at home, it's turned around to say, well, these people aren't like us. We're going to use that to coalesce a sort of nationalist identity that's really just going to give us military and economic power to try to like do economics the way we want to. Hallie, I don't think I can recap for Chris. I'm very sorry about that. Yeah, Iffy Jiffy says this is so important to discuss. Yeah, and I think like, underline so much of this too. Like when he talks about industrialization, it's not just like we opened factories, so then we needed trains and schools. It's like, well, no, like the factories introduced an entire new social and economic logic to society. And then we needed to create cultural structures to facilitate the, reduplication of the working class. And then we had to come up with ideological and social structures and narratives to keep the working class in the position in which they were in while other people could benefit off that. In one sense, it's more complicated. In another sense, it's way more simple. But it was a gorgeous video. So we'll say that. Okay, guys, we're going to be back on Wednesday. Lux is going to join me. So set your calendar reminder to tell everyone we'll be back Wednesday for Wisecrack Live. And hey, guys, can I say this really genuinely? Thank you so much. It's like stressful and scary for me to run one of these streams solo. And getting to do it with you all is very cool and very nice. last thing I should say, which I shouldn't, if you haven't checked it out, I made a video on my personal channel over the weekend you might like, so check that out if you have a second. But thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for being here together. I really like you all. I really do. You're just such great people. And I really mean that. I'm not just trying to suck you off to be nice. So I'll catch you guys on Wednesday. Have a great one in the meantime. And stay cool. Cool cats.